Hey friends, I am Hannah, and this is my cute little podcast where I just talk about all the things I'm learning that has to do with learning how to earn a sustainable income, learning how to be more authentic to myself, learning how to regain that self trust and establish a self trust that I have never had in my life, and just in general, trying to um, trying to learn more about who I actually am. What are my needs that I am unaware of, or it's related to aspects of myself that I demonize or suppress somewhere along the way. So, yeah, I think about these topics all the time, and I'm always reading other people's ideas on these topics, and I like sharing the things that I learning about and reflecting on for myself in hopes that it can be helpful to other people who are on similar journeys, but also because it's just an important thing for me that I practice expressing myself and help to like integrate and digest what I'm learning about more. But I have my laptop right here, and I just wanted to talk a little bit this morning about something that I was reading from a woman called Bridgette Hamstead. Not sure if I'm saying that right. Maybe it's Homestead or some Homestead, or I don't know. But on Substack, she's an author on Substack whose posts are extremely strengthening and encouraging and medicinal for me. And she wrote this post called Misattunement as Structural Violence, a New Framework for Understanding Developmental Harm. And in it, she kind of talks about how we are misunderstood. There are these narratives in the world that we are all handed down for how to interpret people. We are taught to shame, punish, villainize people in order to motivate and persuade others to change their behavior, you know? And so she's talking about like how as kids and everybody as kids, we go through these experiences where people want us to do something different. They're in survival mode themselves, and so instead of stopping, being more curious, learning more, they just say things to discount us, to misinterpret us and villainize us. And over time, this gets us to internalize these narratives against our own selves, and we probably use it in to interpret other people as well. Just these patterns of using, shame, punishment, emotional violence, fear, threats, villainization, using these kinds of narratives in order to interpret and motivate people or persuade people to do something, or just to, when we feel like we are responsible or involved in a situation, we have to take action. Like, this is the kind of programming that's most dominant in the world, how we are all taught to deal with problems, to deal with interpersonal difficulties or conflicts. um, and then we internalize that kind of communication pattern into ourselves, like how we're talking with our own self, using those harsh ways instead of curiosity and narratives that still see us in a positive light. And anyway, so she talks about this in um her uh piece. And then at the bottom, she asks these really great reflection questions. But I wanted to read something first that is down towards the bottom of the post. So she says that, she's talking about um, these patterns of communication that we internalize, like that it is a structural thing, so that we're not antagonizing individuals, we're antagonizing the aspects of this structure that lives through them. Um, and yeah, so she says, and misattunement is the word that she uses to describe um, when people misunderstand us, when people, people villainize us. But she says recognizing misattunement as structural violence is not an indictment of individuals. It is an indictment of systems that demand uniformity at the expense of human variation. It is a call to redesign environments so that neurodivergent bodies do not have to twist themselves into shapes that break them. It is an invitation to imagine a world where attunement is not rare, where difference is not treated as disruption, and where neurodivergent nervous systems are not forced into constant negotiation with environments that cannot perceive them accurately. This is the work of neurodiversity justice. It is the work of telling the truth about how harm happens so that we can finally build something better. And that to me is just so I don't know what's going on with my voice. But that is just so so like I was on sorry, when I was reading it, I just felt this sense of like a weight lifted off of my shoulders and just being like, okay, this is what I'm about too, like telling the truth about how harm happens, using those convictions that we have, the convictions that come from our grief, because a lot of therapists I've talked to, or just in general people, they are like, no, don't identify with the part of you that was harmed. That's in the past. That's not you anymore. But for me, an essential part of my healing has been to be like, no, actually, like all those things related to the wounds, it is so necessary for me to incorporate into my identity, because those wounds are where my convictions and my passions come from. The 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 wisdom that I have is partly because I realize, oh, like this is really damaging. This is shaping my beliefs and my views in the world because I've experienced it. And I think it's so necessary for so many of us, especially when we are trying to go forward into the world through creative avenues, or more like, because I can understand, if you're getting a job down at the Safeway or whatever, maybe it isn't useful for you in that time to be thinking about like the past and um the grief and all of that. But if you are trying to do something more creative, or more, directly self-expressive, that incorporates your personal life experiences and your personal views, then it could be a really essential thing for you to delve into, in thinking about your past your past wounds. And I think it really helps to remember that, like, yes, like our parents, our other caregivers, our teachers, our mental health professionals, our anybody who has been, like, our doctors, like anybody who has been seen in kind of a position of authority, that they aren't immune to this kind of structural violence, this kind of structure, and recognizing that this structural violence is something that is violent to themselves as well, because they are um, most likely also engaging with themselves in this way, of using shame, fear, violence, threats, terror, uh, guilt, in order to build a narrative around something and then persuade themselves, like, trying to decide what to do, trying to, that's just like the internal problem solving capability that most people are programmed with, is um Yeah, and so something that I was thinking about also is that let's see. Trying to read something on here so that I can have that thought put back into my head what I was thinking about. Um Oh, okay. So one of the reflection questions that Bridgette Hamstead asks in her piece, like at the end of it, is what parts of your story become clearer or more coherent when you understand misattunement as a structural problem rather than a reflection of your character? And I think that is, such a really fascinating and important question. Um, I was thinking about it earlier and just being like, okay, yeah, the phrasing of this is really, really perfect because it is like consolidated, nice and simple. And and I was thinking also that uh you know, the implication in this is um that if we notice something is wrong, that it's always a moral thing, that it is always I don't I so for me, I'm really cautious. I don't want to be pulled to make any decision in either direction too strongly, you know, because I do think like, okay, if I am making a decision because I don't want to have it, reflected upon my character that it is necessary that I like demonize myself. Like, what if I am still doing something that isn't authentic for me? You know, what if I am still doing something that isn't authentic for me, but it doesn't mean that it requires, shame and violence against myself and accepting these things from other people in order for me to learn and find a different approach, And I also ask myself like what if sometimes what I am trying to do is well, I feel like this is very ungrounded. I'm getting kind of tired talking. Um I feel like I need to sleep now and I'm not talking in clear examples. Um, well, just read what she was talking about because I'm too tired and I like talking about it takes a lot more energy, especially when I'm not having clear examples in mind to talk about. But yeah, it's probably going to help you if you read read her whole post and piece, and you can have your own interesting reflections, and I'd be curious to hear what you think and feel about it as you you know just what are your thoughts on it and this topic in general of how when we are misattuned, meaning when we are communicated with violence, when people communicate to us, interpret us in a violent style that is meant to demean, paint us as villainized or corrupt instead of understanding the beauty and necessity and balance in what we are, you know. And I was thinking too, a lot of times people, especially authority positions, you experience this as a kid, you experience it when you're older, like there is such, experiencing this with like people who are in professional capacities, that people have such this terror of being of like their sense of authority being removed, or their belief in their own selves being removed, that if there are any questions or disagreements, they aren't okay to just say, oh, like, I respect that's your view and this is my view. Like, people feel so strongly like they have to convince and persuade. And I was just thinking in general that, like, when you're a kid, there are people who will be like asking asking you to do something, let's say. Asking you to do something, and if you're overwhelmed, you feel afraid, you feel like you're being like menaced or threatened in order to do something, then maybe you shut down, and maybe they start to feel like oh, my authority is being questioned, my authority, like I don't know how else I'm supposed to do things, I just have to be like even harder and like crueler to force this person, you know. And and sometimes it is because this, I'm thinking of like a teacher when you're a kid, you know. Maybe this teacher is just overwhelmed and doing their best, but also maybe a part of them actually feels like attacked by a little kid. A little kid doing their thing, because I feel like it is a, you know, implied with their it is somehow connected to their like capability or to their worth as a human being, and they're afraid other people are going to judge them and harm them for not being able to control things properly, you know, for not being able to do the job properly, and they're afraid of other adults coming down on them. And anyway, it's really interesting to go look at those reflection questions on her post. I think it's really interesting to reflect about how um, uh, just experiences throughout our childhood and adulthood too, especially in partnerships or work environments. Um, how this villainization by other people can creep in and affect our own perceptions of ourselves, and it can affect well, another question she asks is, what part of yourself did you learn to hide or soften in order to avoid being misread? And the implication in there is, if somebody's misreading you, they're not misreading you in a kind way. They're misreading you, and the evidence is that they're trying to harm and force you, and, you know, use shame and punishment and all that fun stuff. Um, but yeah, what parts of yourself did you learn to hide or soften in order to avoid being misread, and how did those adaptations become a part of your identity over time? I really like the way this is phrased, because it's so so compact. And yeah, that's just something that I've been thinking about a lot over the past few weeks. That there are parts of me that I've definitely learned to demonize. There, I have unmet, unidentified needs. There's parts of me that have been demonized, parts of me that have been, you know, I just never had the safe or resourced environments in order to explore different aspects of me that are innate, that are a big part of me. And that really affects my capability of being able to earn money in the world, because there are these essential parts of me that are the parts through which I deliver value into the world. But these parts have been, you know, cut off from me or demonized, so I can't see them for what they actually are. And yeah, and I think also something I want to remember also is to look into how yeah, just in general, like how the qualities about me that I normally assume are negative, or it just is related to trauma, being like, actually, where in that did I actually receive like a gift, or it reveals some kind of capability or strength I have, um through, dealing with the trauma, or anyway, I'm tired, but just wanted to put out these thoughts for today. I'm probably going to be doing a lot of these little podcast um, episodes on a more regular basis, just because I'm trying to reflect more and hoping to also have some kind of conversations with people who are also thinking about these topics a lot, very often. And yeah, okay. Trying to think if I have any questions I can ask. If you read Bridgette Hamstead's post, what do you think about it? You know, just what are the thoughts that you have during it, and what are the thoughts that you have yeah, just related to your own quest to, creatively express in an authentic way, or to earn money in a sustainable way, and just find a more authentic lifestyle and way of being for yourself that feels worth being alive for. Okay, take care. Bye.